Morning, everyone. Thanks for giving the agency, the EMA, the opportunity to share also with you an overview of the agency's activities in the field of medicine shortages. My name is Joao Ferreira. I'm a pharmacist by training. I also joined the EMA in 2014, and since 2019, I'm part of the agency's policy and crisis management team, which also deals with shortages and also availability issues of medicines in Europe. So I'll start with an introductory background slide. So, as you know, obviously, shortages of medicines are a growing issue of concern in the EU at the moment and also globally. And the European network is also being confronted with supply challenges and also shortages problems for both new and also well-established medicines. So shortages can occur for many reasons. So we have, for example, shortages related to and linked to manufacturing difficulties or problems that affect the quality of medicines that can obviously have an impact on patient care, but also shortages or availability problems can also occur due to economic or business reasons. So as you know, the problems of availability of medicines also have an impact not only on the supply chain, but also ultimately on healthcare systems. And this obviously results in a significant impact also on the end users to the various reasons, due to the various obviously listed reasons that we have here on screen. So it can lead to medicines rationing, also delay of critical treatments, as well as lead to the use of alternatives that may be less efficacious or leads to increase of risk of medication errors and also adverse events. So improving the availability of medicines authorized in the EU is indeed one of the key priorities for the EU medicines regulatory network. Now we'll be moving now to the next slide, where I just wanted to give you also a bit of context on how regulatory authorities are managing shortages in Europe. So one important element is that in the EU, most medicine shortages are actually dealt with at the national level by the national competent authorities, and also that marketing authorization holders and manufacturers are also required by the EU legislation to inform the regulators in the event of supply disruptions that can lead to shortages or market cessation. So primarily, the European regulatory network aims to minimize the impact of these medicine shortages on patients and also healthcare professionals by working with companies to resolve the manufacturing and also distribution issues, and also by seeking input from patients and also healthcare professionals on the impact of these medicine shortages, also to support our decision-making processes. So as you can see on this slide, since 2016, we have this joint task force set up by the European Medicines Agency and also by the heads of medicines agencies in Europe that have been looking at availability issues for medicines that are authorized but not marketed, to try to improve continuity of supply of human and vet medicines across Europe. I can also confirm that one of its key priorities also include fostering collaboration with various stakeholders and also enhancing communication of supply problems also to EU healthcare professionals and also patients. Important also to mention that by bringing together the experts from the various EU member states, also the work of the task force laid the foundations for an improved EU approach when it comes to addressing shortages and availability issues during the pandemic. But I'll be going through in more detail on this aspect later in the presentation. So on this next slide, basically we have just a summary of the work done by this task force that I just mentioned, with 4 of the key deliverables where the task force basically put a focus until late 2019. So the first one is a guidance on detection and also notification of shortages for companies, which aim primarily to harmonize the way how shortages are reported and also managed across the EU. Also, this guidance includes and is based on a harmonized definition of a shortage as agreed by all national competent authorities and also by the EMA. And the guidance also contains a reporting template that is to be used by member states where no reporting template is actually available. So the EMA and the HMA intend to launch a pilot project on implementing this guidance, but this has been so far delayed due to the pandemic. The second one is the guidance for national competent authorities and also to the EMA on good practices in communicating to the public medicines availability issues. This was also published in 2019 and provides key principles and also examples of good practices for communicating to the public shortages for human and also veterinary medicines. Third is the EU single point of contact network is one of the task force's little babies established also in 2019. The aim is to improve information sharing between member states, the EMA and also the European Commission on shortages of critical human and veterinary medicines, which also includes sharing information on alternative medicines that might be available in other member states. So this is a collaborative platform which did not really exist before and was established in 2019. And also in the next slide, I will also be telling you more about the contribution of this network during the pandemic in more detail. Finally, another of the task force outputs is the shortage metrics document, also published in November 2019, which establishes key information and also proposes metrics of shortages for national regulatory authorities to enhance shortage management and also to monitor shortages across the EU. So in the context of the pandemic, so the EMA went beyond its legal remit and has been asked to take on the role of a central coordinator to support actively the member states' prevention and also management actions with regards to shortages. And in this respect, the agency has initiated a number of activities. The first one being the setup of the EU Executive Steering Group of shortages caused by major events. So the mandate of this group was to provide strategic leadership and also leadership to prevent urgent and also allow for coordinated actions to prevent and mitigate supply disruptions within the EU during the pandemic. So in the context of COVID, the group tried to identify and also coordinate EU-wide actions to protect patients when medicines in the EU were at risk of supply shortages, for example, due to temporary lockdowns of manufacturing sites, or also when travel restrictions were impacted by shipment. So the group also ensured that patients and also healthcare professionals across the EU were kept informed, also in a consistent manner, about the risks and the remedial actions that were being undertaken by publication of multiple press releases that were published on the EMA website. Also, the EU Executive Steering Group set up in April last year, together in collaboration also with pharmaceutical companies, a fast-track monitoring system to help prevent also and mitigate supply issues for a subset of crucial medicines that are used to treat COVID-19 patients. This is the so-called ICE-POC system. So basically, under this system, what we have is each pharmaceutical company appointing an industry single point of contact that then reports to the EMA and also to the affected authorities all ongoing or anticipated shortages of medicines used to treat COVID-19 patients, especially those medicines that are used in hospital ICU. So basically, the agency compiles all the information received from companies and also shares this information with the steering group that I just mentioned for decision on EU level measures. So in the context of COVID-19, also the EMA continued to use the USPOC network, to which I also just referred at the very beginning. So this network has continuously shared information between the member states, the EMA, and also the European Commission on critical medicine shortages in the context of COVID-19. Also, the EMA has gathered information on these medicines used for COVID patients, again, primarily on the ICU setting, that were either at risk of shortages or really facing shortages, and this information was actually used by the EU Health Commissioner to try to make a plea for industry to increase production of these medicines also in the beginning of the first wave last year. Also, in addition, due to export restrictions that were imposed by the Indian government, also the EMA also collected demand data from EU member states for 14 substances that were under export restrictions. So this data was actually used by, again, the EU Health Commissioner also in direct negotiations with the Indian government. Also, A fourth aspect is the fact that EMA also together with the member states has been developing this common framework for forecasting demand data in the EU and the EA. And the idea here is to improve the forecasting of demand of medicines that are used in ICUs for COVID-19 patients. And it was also important to see how can we actually better match the estimated demand and also with the available supply of medicines. This will bring me now to the next slide, and this is the European Union Health Initiative, which was also presented by the European Commission last November. So this includes an extension of the EMA mandate to prepare and also respond to public health emergencies. So the European Health Union package builds actually on the first lessons learned from the current pandemic, and also amongst others, it mandates the EMA to coordinate responses of EU member states in order to assess and also supply capacity, and also to monitor and quantify and also prevent and mitigate shortages of crucial medicines and also medical devices during crisis events. So the legislative proposal strengthens the current role of the EMA in shortages of medicines and also crisis management, as well as this completely new role for the agency in the management of medical devices shortages. With regards still to the legislative proposal for the reinforced role for the EMA in shortage management, this proposal also builds on some of the achievements during the COVID-19 pandemic, like the EU Executive Steering Group and also the ICEBOX system that I just mentioned before. Also, the proposal gives the mandate to the EMA also to develop streamlined electronic monitoring and also reporting systems to prevent and also manage shortages, which will also help gradually to increase the transparency also of global supply chains. And finally, the proposal also put clear obligations to the companies and also to the member states for reporting of shortages and also of supply capacity and demand data to the agency, which will also facilitate setting recommendations and also coordinating measures to prevent and mitigate potential or actual shortages. So this is already our final slide. So just to conclude, indeed, since 2016, the joint EMA and HMA task force has been looking at availability issues, including also supply chain disruptions to try to improve continuity of supply across Europe for both human and veterinary medicines. As I also mentioned, in the context of the pandemic, the EMA has also taken this central coordination role in the handling of shortages, and this again was in support and in coordination also with the member states, despite the initial lack of a clear legal mandate. And now the legislative proposal for the reinforced role of the agency will also reflect much of the processes that were already put in place for in the context of the pandemic, but primarily will formalize these systems and will help them being more robust in order to tackle shortages in the context of public health emergencies. So I'll stop here, and I'd be happy to take also any questions at the end. So over to you, Chair. Thank you.